Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros, it's Drew here. And earlier this month, my favorite family-owned parks got bought up by another company. So let's talk through this and go over some of the possibilities. So if you didn't hear, back on November 12th, it was officially announced that Herschend was going to acquire Silverwood. Now, if neither of those words mean anything to you, let me explain. Herschend is the company that currently owns Silver Dollar City, Dollywood, Kennywood, Kentucky Kingdom, and plenty of other properties, especially since they just recently acquired all of the US locations of Parque Renudo's parks. Silverwood, the newest park in their catalog, is located up in northern Idaho and was family owned and operated, starting business back in 1988. Herschend Entertainment, to use their full name, has really started to stake its claim as another major player in theme park chains across the US. As we used to talk Disney versus Universal versus Six Flags versus Cedar Fair versus SeaWorld, and now, especially after the past handful of years, Herschend is joining that conversation for sure. And as someone who's visited multiple parks underneath Herschend ownership, it's super easy to see the type of vibe that this company goes for within their parks. And that is a focus on family entertainment, guest service, and of course sprinkling in a couple of thrills now and then. Now I will say I did get a pretty different experience at the two separate Herschend properties I visited. The first, of course, being Silver Dollar City, the park that started the entire company, and it's easily the best park I've visited in the past handful of years. The theming, the thrills, the food, the entertainment, and just the overall friendly and happy atmosphere that this park gave me over a handful of days was truly astonishing. I loved every second of being at that park, as its goal is to take you back in time toward the 1880s in the middle of the Ozark Mountains, and it does a pretty fantastic job of that. The other property I visited was Kentucky Kingdom, and this was in 2022, so Herschend had just recently bought the property. Now, to be completely honest, this park was in a very weird state when I visited, as you could definitely tell the acquisition was fairly recent, as there was still a lot of changeover happening with policy changes, from rides to food to staffing. And to be completely honest, I think the only thing that actually told me it was a Herschend property was that there was a brand new cinnamon bread bakery built toward the front of the park. But outside of that, all I could think was, man, this was a Six Flags park that was abandoned 20 years ago, but they started putting brand new amazing roller coasters all over it. Since my visit though, they have been re-theming rides, taking out certain rides, and building brand new themed experiences, with part of the park that definitely felt underutilized becoming a brand new kiddie area that is a lot better in terms of theming. Granted, you can only change so much of a park within a couple of years, but everything I've heard has said that Kentucky Kingdom has ended up thriving. Now, this brings us to Silverwood, the park that was just announced to be purchased by Herschend. I was able to visit this park the same year I visited Silver Dollar City, and while I only technically had one day at this park, I absolutely loved my time there. And looking back at it, it did feel almost like the perfect cross between Silver Dollar City and Kentucky Kingdom. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's dive into it. Silverwood, in terms of feel and theme and food, it felt exactly like Silver Dollar City Light. But the one thing that I definitely can compare it to Kentucky Kingdom with is its odd layout, and not the best operations. That was another thing at Kentucky Kingdom that definitely felt kind of confusing, with most of their coasters on one train, and some of their coasters only having one operator at the time, too. This unfortunately was fairly similar to the Silverwood experience. However, everything else at that park was an absolute joy. All I could say at the end of my visit was, man, this is just like Silver Dollar City, except with a little bit less budget and being located in the Pacific Northwest. Now, from my understanding, Herschend has been trying to buy this property for quite a few years now, and while I am sad to see the Norton family leaving their beloved project of over 30 years, I will say, if this ends up in even a touch more budget being allocated to this park, it genuinely could be a must-stop park for any theme park lover. Don't get me wrong, I do have some worries when it comes to this changeover, the first of which being Scarywood and whether Scarywood will still be in operation during the Halloween season. If you don't know, they have a haunt event at Silverwood every Halloween, and it's super similar to other park haunts around the US, but comparing this to other major Herschend parks, they don't really have a haunt style event that's super scary with scare actors and mazes. They typically just go for a more spooky style event with trick-or-treating, pumpkins, and an event more geared toward the family experience. Another thing is what the next handful of years are going to look like, especially in terms of operations. I know that was my biggest problem with Kentucky Kingdom, but hopefully it's only for a little bit if they do encounter any troubles with that. But honestly, if there is a park chain to purchase this place, Herschend makes the most sense. They have practically perfected that style of park, and this transaction makes a heck of a lot more sense to me than almost every other acquisition they've made in the last 5 years. Silverwood just fits their company that well. Genuinely, there are only a handful of parks that feel that similar out of the dozens I've visited. Heck, I'll list them off right now. Silver Dollar City, Silverwood, and Knott's Berry Farm. Speaking of acquisitions and changeover and lots of things happening in the theme park industry, especially with Herschend being as interested in acquiring other properties as of late, it makes me super curious to see what they would do if they owned Knott's Berry Farm. There are so many similarities between Silver Dollar City, Silverwood, and Knott's Berry Farm. All three of them have more similarities than I could list off, at least right now. But I genuinely have been thinking about this quite a bit, as with some of the troubles that Six Flags is facing as a company since the merge, and openly talking about selling off properties if it makes sense, followed by another acquisition from Herschend, could end up making some interesting sparks. Now, I will say I'm very excited to see some of the changes that will be coming with the new leadership coming into Six Flags in the next couple of weeks, with John Riley becoming the new president and CEO. Now, he did a phenomenal job at SeaWorld San Diego before moving on to bigger things. So, of course, I'm incredibly interested to see how he is going to go about this crazy project combining 40 plus major theme parks and water parks, and whether some of the claims that have been made over the past earning calls will remain the same, especially when it comes to selling parks for the right asking price. Now, you're probably saying, why would they sell Knott's? Knott's is so profitable for the chain every single year. And while I agree, that's a completely far-fetched idea for them to do so, especially with the consistent attendance numbers, the constantly successful food events, and of course, Scary Farm. But at the same time, if the price was high enough, imagine what those funds for purchasing Knott's could do for the rest of the chain, especially if Herschend was willing to pay hundreds of millions of dollars. Not saying that they are, but it would be a very interesting step in their portfolio. And if you want me to dive into these thoughts more, let me know down in the comments below. I'd really love to know your thoughts on that potential crazy idea and whether I should really flesh out my what if scenario. And also let me know, what do you think of this acquisition of Silverwood, as well as the attention to all of the parks that Herschend has recently acquired? I would love to know how Kennywood, Lake Compounce, and other places are doing from a guest perspective. But with that, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And of course, until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.